Hello, and in this edition of Bite Size Performance Psychology, we're going to look at a technique that I've taken from the more traditional coaching type of psychology, and I've started to use it with athletes, and it's been really good at looking at how athletes respond or how athletes behave in certain circumstances, and how you can put together a plan for kind of changing aspects of those thoughts or behaviours that are not conducive to performance, and changing them for different things that will be more conducive to you being able to perform at the top end of your potential. So the model is called SPACE. You can see that it's an acronym. It refers to the social context, physical reaction, your actions or behaviours, cognitions or thoughts, and your emotional responses. I'll show how all these link together, and that will give you a better idea of how they work. So as you can see, the social context kind of sits outside of the four main interacting aspects of the SPACE model. So you have the social aspect is the situation which the athlete finds himself in. So you have four different sections then underlying that, which are physical responses, your actions or behaviours, your cognitions, which are your thoughts, your internal dialogue, and your emotional responses. And those are really the four different ways in which athletes can react in any given situation. And for that social context, you can look at any sort of on either a macro level, whereby you're saying like before a game, or a micro level when you're looking at it in relation to more smaller aspects of the individual's performance. So for a cricketer, it might be after they've played and missed at a shot. So if we use the context of, or the social context of before big match, you can see that this player physically was getting butterflies, shaky hands, muscle tension. That was their predominant physiological and physical response to that stimulus or that social situation. Their actions, their behaviours were that they had very negative body language, and when they started to compete, they tried to hide or avoid becoming integrated and proactive in the actual game. Their cognitions or their thoughts: what if I lose? I always play poorly against this team. Typical kind of self-defeating sorts of thoughts that might accompany someone who's suffering from pre-match anxiety. And their emotional response was that they became nervous, they started to feel awkward and also embarrassed about the situation they were in, but also embarrassed when they started to think about the consequences of what might happen if they underperform. So this was filled in by an athlete, and I spent a lot of time with the athlete kind of going through this and examining and investigating what their different responses were to these different components of the SPACE model. What I then did was to get them to reflect about how they wanted to feel in these different aspects. So physically, how would they like to feel before that big match in order to get them to perform to their best? Actions, their behaviour, what sort of things would they like to display? So they came up with things like positive body language and approach rather than avoid different aspects of the situation. Cognitions, how would they like to think ideally? So thinking about being more positive, to think clearly and logically rather than typically they were kind of confused and struggled to keep things in perspective. Emotionally, how did they want to feel? So instead of feeling kind of awkward, embarrassed, lethargic as they were, the emotions that they wanted to experience were excited, ready, prepared, and energized for what they were going to do. So I go through that with the athlete, and when we end up with a list of behaviours and thoughts and emotions about how they want to be, then we can start putting in strategies to address those. But for what we need to cover in this bite-sized psychology, it's good to just give you the technique so you can start to investigate how those things fit in with you, and then later on in a different video that I'll do, we'll look at some different techniques that you can use to address any of those particular aspects that you believe aren't conducive to your performance.